This is
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Folks, as you know, another jobs report has been released. We're happy to have with us on Make It Plain the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Employment and Training, Assistant Secretary Angela Hanks from the Department of Labor. Assistant Secretary Hanks, Madam Secretary, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Well, first of all, let's talk a bit. This is the first time you've joined us. Let's let our audience know a little bit about who you are and what you do. What is in your purview when it comes to employment and training?
Yes. So as you mentioned, I'm the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Employment and Training Administration. And at the moment, I'm acting Assistant Secretary. And our agency does a number of things inside of the department, including managing the workforce development portfolio. So many of the nation's investments in job training, in registered apprenticeship, live within the Employment and Training Administration at the DOL.
Okay. So I have to ask this. We're looking at one piece of legislation is passed, another we're trying to get passed. First, the physical infrastructure, then the human infrastructure and Build Back Better. Would employment and training from the jobs that would come from both of those bills, do those fall somewhat in your purview?
So we see ourselves as core partners in the bipartisan infrastructure law implementation, working in partnership with our sister agencies in the Department of Transportation and Energy, because we do have an important role to play in ensuring that the jobs that are created by the infrastructure law, which we're estimating to be $1.5 million or 1.5 million jobs each year over the next decade, that there are equitable pathways into those jobs. And so we are very committed to ensuring that there are pathways through pre-apprenticeship, through registered apprenticeship, paid opportunities for people to earn and learn on the job, and that those pathways are open to and supportive of communities that have historically been left behind, including women, including people of color, just people with disabilities, and people formerly incarcerated and other marginalized groups. And then in Build Back Better, we see ourselves, we have a core role to play, and there's a proposed significant investment in the Department of Labor and in the Employment and Training Administration specifically in developing those critical pathways. So it's both a complement to the infrastructure law, but also allows us to build pathways into jobs in other key critical industries like healthcare, like childcare, education, et cetera.
Very important, absolutely important. And especially since, and we'll segue into this, during this period of the pandemic, it has been women and people of color that have been disproportionately affected by job losses, haven't they?
Yes. Women and people of color in particular have borne the brunt of the pandemic for a variety of reasons. Certainly the lack of access to reliable childcare throughout the course of the pandemic, which is something Build Back Better would address, has been a major challenge for women, especially women of color. If you're a lower wage worker who's working in a job that either doesn't sort of pay enough to allow for reliable childcare, or isn't flexible enough to allow you. There isn't the infrastructure there to support you, it's going to be harder to get to work. And so when we think about the programs that we offer here, it's both the actual training that we provide, but it's also that connection to supportive services. It's impossible to get to work if you don't have access to childcare, if you don't have access to transportation. And we know that those services are disproportionately out of reach for the communities that we're talking about. And so we're really trying to think about, it's not just about the training or the job itself, it really is about supporting the whole worker in that pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in terms of jobs for the month of November, new jobs report out. First of all, I'll let you kind of break the news in your own way. How is this report? How did we do?
I think there's a lot of really exciting news here. So I would say the big news is that we are at 4.2% unemployment. And that's coming, if we look at this time last year, we were in a truly devastating place. And so the fact that we're at 4.2% now, I think, is nothing short of incredible. I think there are also some really positive signs around labor force participation. We did see that tick up this month, which is a good sign that people are feeling more confident. They're moving back in to the job market. They feel safer, more secure. Those are all good signs. And then we're also seeing improvements to sort of particular groups' employment. So I think the one thing that stuck out to me in the report is that Black women's unemployment is at 5%. There was a slight tick down in labor force participation. So I think we do have to pay attention to that to make sure that unemployment is dropping because Black women are getting into jobs and of course getting into good jobs. But I think that there's a lot to be excited about here.
So, but now the number of jobs added, I think it was around 210,000.
Yes.
Is that so? That's down than what was anticipated, though, isn't it?
So it was still a strong month, and we still have about 588,000 jobs we had revised up from the previous 2 months. So I think taken together, we still feel very good about the number of jobs that are being added. And again, if it's not just the jobs being added, but also more people coming into the labor market, which is something that's new, that I think while between that and the overarching unemployment rate, you can sort of see that there is more confidence in the labor market overall.
So you know what Twitter's saying? They're saying, well, it says 210,000, but we saw what happened the past couple of months. It ended up getting adjusted up anyway.
Right. We saw major revisions over the summer.
Yeah. So can you help us even understand that? Because a lot of people don't understand how we get a number now, and then there's a revision up, and it's kind of been glaring the past couple of months how much it's come up. I mean, it's positive. So should we put as much stock into these new numbers, or can we anticipate another revision? And what brings about those types of revisions?
So on most of this, I will say I'll refer to my Bureau of Labor Statistics colleagues who spend a lot of time deep in the data, but I will say a couple of things. So first of all, the data throughout the pandemic, there's been a lot of volatility just because we're still in this unprecedented time. I think something that's always important to remember and keep top of mind for us is that, we are still dealing with the effects of COVID across the board, including in our data collection. The good news is we are finding out over the course of the last several months that we're actually underestimating the number of jobs that have been created and that people are moving into. But that is something that is not atypical for these types of reports. There typically are revisions. And I think, again, what we're seeing from those revisions is actually we're creating more jobs each month over month.
Okay.
So we have time for one more question.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Do any, in terms of this current jobs report for November, do any particular industries stand out? I know the hospitality industry, as it was hardest hit, has been climbing back. So normally it's been that industry, but in any other industries, or what about state and local? How did we do this time with those areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are seeing positive upticks in some of those key industries that you mentioned. There are some real challenges still with state and local governments. And of course, the funds that the administration has made available through the American Rescue Plan Act can help states and localities with their public sector hiring, for example. But the other really important thing that's happening across these sectors is we're seeing wages rise. And that's a really positive sign. I think, especially for these sectors that have really been challenged throughout the pandemic, it's often the lowest wage sectors where workers are most precariously employed. And so that positive wage growth along with the job increases is a good sign going forward.
All right. Happy to have you join us. Pleasure to meet you. Angela Hanks, folks, Acting Assistant Secretary and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Employment and Training at the Department of Labor. Thank you for being here with us. Okay.
Thanks so much. It's great to meet you.
More MIP after this message.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save money on your insurance? Of course you would. After all, who wouldn't love a great deal, right? And when it comes to great rates on insurance for all of the things in your life, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners, condo, or renters coverage. You could save even more with a special discount when you bundle your coverages. Plus, add the easy-to-use Geico mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And choosing to switch to Geico becomes an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote or contact your local agent and get started seeing how much you could save.
And of course, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now as it is jobs report time. He joins us every time the jobs report is released. The chief economist at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Chad Stone, is here with us. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine. Here we are doing it again, rounding out 2021. So you've already tweeted, and I'll take a cue from there. I've already spoken with the Assistant Secretary of Labor. And as we were talking, I raised the question, and I'll raise it with you. I don't remember, Chad, a time in all the years we've done this when the revisions after the jobs report have been so large. Have you?
So certainly last month they were huge. This month, I mean, it was 80 some thousand, which is still a fair amount. Yeah, and part of it is that it takes time for the reports to come in from companies, and I read somewhere that there was a pretty low response rate initially this month. So in other words, not all the companies that ultimately are going to get their data in have gotten it in yet.
I got you. And the reason I raise it, because it was funny, I think also for the first time since we've been doing this, when the jobs report came out, Twitter was saying, well, can we really believe this? Or will there be? So people are more tuned and aware of revisions than they ever were before.
That's right.
So this month, for example, and you tweet about this, it's a tale of two reports, isn't it?
Yes.
So go. I'll give you the floor. Break that down for us, and
okay,
what the two are.
So the jobs report combines the results of two different surveys. One is a survey of households asking who in your household, what's the labor status of people in your household? Are you working? Are you looking for work? And are you working fewer hours than you want? A whole bunch of questions that feed into the results of the household survey, which is where we get the unemployment rate and other information about what people are doing. The other survey is a survey of employers, actually of individual establishments of employers. So a company that has several places of business gets surveyed at each one of them. And that asks employers, how many people do you have on your payroll? What's the average wage that you're paying? And those kinds of things. And that's focused on jobs, not the people in them. And so you can have a situation in which an individual has multiple jobs. Say they have 3 jobs. They show up 3 times in the survey of employers. I mean, statistically, 3 times in the survey of employers because they have 3 different jobs. And the survey of employers asks about jobs. They show up once in the household survey because they're employed. And there may be a question about multiple jobs, but that doesn't feed into the how many people are employed or how many people are unemployed. So it's people versus jobs and right. Households versus businesses.
And there's a discrepancy. And as you also mentioned, employers are a little bit slower these days with responding to the survey too, right?
Yes.
So we can probably guess that this number for November itself will probably be revised at some point, right?
It will be revised. By how much, that remains to be seen. If the reports of slow responses coming in this month are true, it could be revised substantially. But that's an unknown to us outside of the statistical agencies at this point.
You document, though, looking at everything in total, that average job growth this year in 2021 has still been about 555,000 a month, correct?
That's right. That's yes. I mean, I didn't have to calculate it. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported it, but I got the same calculation in my spreadsheet. Yes, 555. That's pretty substantial.
Yeah,
it's been a little bit slower in the past 3 months, but still, that's solid, and it'll get bumped up a little bit next time. I think the average will get bumped up.
The areas that you and I always talk about, retail, hospitality, leisure, they went down a little bit, didn't they?
Well, yeah, basically, retail went down. Leisure and hospitality, which had been leading the way with lots and lots of job creation, bouncing back from all the job losses last year in March and in April. Leisure and hospitality was up just a little bit, whereas in past months it had been up a lot and was a major contributor. So it was not contributing the way it had been. So that is one of the reasons why the jobs number is lower, because leisure and hospitality is not doing as much this month in November as it was doing in the preceding months.
Any theory as to why that might be?
Could partly be the reporting, but I put more money on a virus getting scarier.
Yeah. And now we've got Omicron, don't we?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, we'll get to it, but I've made a point that the virus is driving things. It's one of the major reasons why we have sorts of stuff, including inflation.
Yeah. More MIP after this message. Well, I mean, well, let's get into it though. You believe that is a factor. I guess that we still really aren't out of this thing, even for those who might think we're past it. That's still a very real factor.
Well, we're definitely not out of the virus, and we don't know about Omicron. We're just learning what its effects will be. But we had Delta cause a lot of problems,
Right.
And then it started to go away a little bit, maybe made things a little bit better. But now it's hard to know what's going on, which way things are trending. What we do know is we need more people to be vaccinated to get this thing fully under control. And to the extent that there are places where there are low vaccination rates, there may well be low labor force participation out of either places still being closed or people being reluctant to go back to work because it's dangerous to go back to face-to-face jobs when the virus isn't under control.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that a number of people who are looking for work, but as a first choice, may very well be are looking for jobs in the remote sector. I mean, that's become attractive to a lot more people, and especially for those who had to do that. Now, but retail, leisure, and hospitality, that doesn't really lend itself to remote.
No. Face-to-face stuff is where the virus really matters.
But you mentioned more people need to be vaccinated. Do we have any evidence that hirings are affected by lack of vaccinations? I know some jobs are saying, okay, we want you to be vaccinated. And there's still a segment of the population that is hesitant to do so. And people going to court and everything. Do we have any evidence that is affecting job growth itself, that there are some jobs, but there are those who may not want to get vaccinated to go and get those jobs?
I'm sure there is. I don't know about evidence relating specifically to vaccinations, but we do know that there are lots of job openings. Job openings are at a high level, and there are a lot of people taking jobs, but there are a lot of people that are perhaps waiting for it to be safer. So I think that part of the lack of part of the disconnect between the large job openings and the fact that maybe there's employers are having trouble filling those jobs has to do with fear of the virus. To some degree, it might be people who don't want to. Who, if the employer wants vaccinations, they don't want it. But I don't have any actual data on those things.
This is November's report. You and I always anticipate, and others as well, some jump during the holiday season. Is November's report too early to assess that? I mean, we'll know that better in December's report, whether that actually has an effect, right?
Right. As we've talked about, the statistical agencies try to put in a seasonal adjustment for the usual amount of growth in jobs in the lead up to the holiday. So that would be as early as October, November, and December. But because of the craziness around COVID, the seasonal factors are probably not doing a good job. So it's very tricky to sort out. Yes, it's definitely, and we hear stories about maybe it's going to be slower or maybe it's going to be more normal. I don't think people really know how strong the holidays season will be. But here we are in December, so next month's report is too late to answer today's question. But
but the other reason I asked too is because to me, even the holiday season is becoming earlier. Like
Yeah,
I was confused about whether we were celebrating Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was very confusing.
right.
Because so I'm like wondering, well, when should we really start counting this? November 1st? I don't know.
Uh,
It used to be
Start
we
in
was
October.
right, really, that's right. You're absolutely right. So that's why I was kind of wondering about that. Long-term unemployed, that number has gone down, but we're still not anywhere near the level that it was in February 2020. Correct?
Yeah, it's quite a bit quite a bit higher. It's 2.2 million people. Now it's down from four some, but it was 1.1 back in February 2020. So it's twice as, and it's about a third of the unemployed are long-term unemployed.
Yeah. Part-time workers. Um, Tell us about that number in
Well,
comparison.
this is an interesting number
Right.
because it's the number of people who reply in the survey or are counted. The survey is of 60 some thousand people. So when I say that a person is counted in the survey, they're probably not, but there's somebody in there that's representing them in the survey. So people who say they're not getting as many hours as they want, part-time for economic reasons is the category. It's down it's down. In fact, it's below where it was at the start of the pandemic in February 2020, which was the high point of the last business cycle. So it's 112,000 people fewer than said they didn't. So something's happening with part-time jobs. I mean, they're part-time for economic reasons that either it's an improvement in the outlook for people getting as many hours as they want, or people who can't get as many hours as they want. Maybe they've dropped out. But almost every number we talk about is still not back to where we were in February 2020. And this is an anomaly. This is one that's a little bit better.
Yeah, that is.
Fewer people are part-time for economic reasons now than were before the pandemic.
Yeah. So as we've touched on, the number of job losses in the low wage industries, also of course, state and local. How did we do on state and local jobs in November?
We still have a substantial, close to 1 million jobs lost it's 900 and something jobs lost to state and local governments, and about 2/3 of them in education. There wasn't much change month to month, but compared with before the recession and before the pandemic, we're still very short 1 million jobs, and 2/3 of them in education.
We're still looking among workers age 20 and older by sex and race or ethnicity. Black women still leading in the percentage of job losses since February 2020.
Yeah, that's another interesting chart, because if I'm remembering, Black men's employment is actually above where it was in February 2020, and I think there's a couple others where, in all cases, women are doing worse than men, and among women, Black women are doing by far the worst. White women are not doing so well either. The white women, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but white women are down 2.7% or something like that, and black women are down more than that.
Yeah, white women 2.7, Black women 3.1%.
Right.
Hispanic women 1.5%. The only women's group that is not gone down is Asian women, and they are plus 0.5%.
Right, and Black men are plus, and I think Hispanic men may be plus. I can't remember for sure.
You're right. Black men are plus 0.1%. Hispanic men are plus 0.9%. Yeah. But now you mentioned unemployment. Let's just go back to that for a minute. Unemployment rate For whites is 3.7, for African Americans 6.7, for Hispanics 5.2, for Asians 3.8. White 3.7 today, 3.0 February 2020. African Americans 6.7 today, 6.0 February 2020. Hispanic 5.2% today, 4.4% February 2020 unemployment, and unemployment for Asians 3.8% today, and 2.4% February of 2020. So still significant ways to go.
Right. But the overall unemployment rate dropped to 4.2%, and in between October and November, all of those groups' unemployment rates went down, and the Black unemployment rate went down the most, from 7.9 in October to 6.7 in November. However, 6.7 is a lot larger than 3.7 for whites.
Yeah,
and
as we said, I mean that's what it's always been. It's always double or near double.
It's almost a physical constant.
Yeah, it is. That's the most. That's why I always say people say, "Oh, well, there are jobs and there are plenty of jobs." Well, something's not right, because that's in my whole lifetime it's always been double.
That's
and
right.
Probably since these statistics were first kept comprehensively going back to the 60s, it's always been double.
Yes.
So something's wrong with that. I don't care what Donald Trump says. I got jobs. I got no.
Yeah. Well, what he let me just say, without talking about Donald Trump, that in February of 2020, the Black unemployment, towards the end of 2019 and just before the recession, the Black unemployment rate was at historically low levels. However, the white unemployment was awfully low too, and so that ratio was still there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in absolute terms, you need a really hot economy to get the Black unemployment rate really down, and you need structural change to get more equitable outcomes.
Yes, sir. No, absolutely. That is definitely necessary. So December upcoming, of course, I'm sure we'll see some revisions, and then I wonder if they'll be as big as they were last month or the month before, and then we'll get a better read on the seasonal piece, and what that means. And as you pointed out, now we've got a whole nother variant out here. Who knows what that's going to mean? But if the average is still 555 a month, that's not anything to sneeze at.
That's correct. That's pretty good pace.
Yeah. So, folks, we will continue to see, and as Chad alluded to, I mean, vaccinations do help, not just to get a job, but to not get sick. Just, a suggestion, folks. So you might want to consider that. And with the new legislation, who knows? And these won't be tomorrow, but there's some jobs that could come from that will be created. The at least the physical infrastructure, and it remains to be seen whether the Build Back Better legislation will pass and what types of jobs that might create.
Right. I think a lot of the momentum for job creation is coming from some of the earlier stimulus legislation that put money in people's hands, and that because of the fact that the economy wasn't fully opening up. It was starting to open up and all that. It hasn't all been spent, so that'll provide momentum to demand going forward. That's what will sustain job creation of the levels that we're expecting and get the unemployment rate down. I said it's a tale of two jobs reports. The household side was really pretty good. 1.1 million more people had jobs. That's now the surveys are different and have different concepts, but that's a big gap between what the payroll employment report is saying and what the household report is saying.
Yeah.
And the unemployment rate down substantially, and even labor force participation, which has been stubbornly low, picked up a few tenths of a percent. And the share of population with a job kicked up 0.4%. So if you looked just at the household report, you'd say, wow, that was really a great month.
Yeah.
If you look at the payroll report, you say, what's wrong?
Right.
So somewhere in the middle.
Folks, as always, if you want to sound as smart as many of you say I do when Chad is on, follow his Twitter. Chad CBPP. That's for Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. It's Chad at Chad CBPP. Check out his thread. He does a great analysis. Chad, as always, thank you, buddy, and happy holidays to you and yours.
You're welcome, and to you.
We'll talk in, I guess, we'll talk next year in 2022.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
2022. Wow.
And it's flown. It's I don't know what happened. It's just it's out of control.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.